It's Monday, July the 7th, 2014, and we're vertical mowing greens again this morning. We double vertical mowed them two directions last week, last Tuesday, and we've had some pretty good growth, and we were a little behind on our vertical mowing, so we vertical mowed again and this Monday. But we're going to show you in close detail a little bit sort of how we do it. You can see he's going at a 45 here. This is one of our 4 different patterns that we go. We do change our directional mowing on these vertical mowing. It's real important that you do that. And he does a backtrack method, which is going down grain and coming back in the same pass. That way you get the grain no matter which way it lays. If you don't do that, there'll be some times that you won't get your grain because forward rotating blades won't really vertical mow properly when you're going uphill with the grain, or against the grain, so to speak. It's so most people are doing this backtrack method now. It's pretty common. You can see it's not that aggressive. Also, some of the areas that tend to puff or pull on these crowns, so I'm going to show you a prime example. You can see right here how this is trying to pull and puff a little bit. It's pretty common. You can get a little bit thick. So what you need to do there, instead of mowing behind this where it's pulling on these thicker areas, like right here you can see it's a little puffier, what you need to do is come back and roll this with your roller and mash it down before you mow it. That way you won't pull as bad, and a lot of times you can add just a little bit of water to that and roll it, and it'll lay it down and you can mow it and it won't scalp off. If you mow it when it's pulled up like that, it will scalp it. So you don't want to run a brush or a groomer on your mower either after you vertical mow. Just run straight mower. That way you won't tend to scalp. And scalp ultra-dwarfs, they don't heal up very fast. It's not a very good thing to do. We always put a little water down. We'll show you here in a minute. We put water down in front of the mowers before they vertical mow. It makes the grass lubricate better and it doesn't pull as bad. This is our number 16 green. He's fixing the vertical mow it next, and he's over here mowing, vertical mowing right now. So I just running the Freedom radio here and keeping in front of him right before he gets to the green. I turn on 3 or 4 minutes of water. That's on a full circle head, just to make sure we got plenty of moisture on that top 1 inch. Really, it's not even 1 inch you're looking for. You're just looking for it to lubricate the top surface, and makes the vertical mowing go a lot better. Okay, this is our unit that we use to vertical mow with. It's just a standard Toro 3150. As you can see, the 3150 triplex. This unit also has the older style reels. I'd like to show you. It has the wheels, the little wheels on the outside instead of, and they have little scrapers on them, as you can see right here, to keep the wheels clean as it goes around. And I really like these units a lot better than the newer units would have the front rollers and the rear rollers. This has no rear roller, it just has wheels, and as you can see, the wheels are on the outside of this frame. So all this debris that's being thrown out, typically by these forward rotating reels, it's going to come out primarily forward, because the shroud keeps the material inside and then it circulates around and comes out forward. People forget that on forward rotating reels, if you have a rear discharge chute and you open it up, well, then it throws it out the back. But when you have an enclosement shroud, it throws it in the front, and that's why you have all this debris getting out here on the front of this material. And if you have a roller out here that's going to get going to be very hard to keep it clean. You're going to have a scraper or some way to keep that clean as it goes around. As it builds up on the roller, your height changes, and it gets real frustrating because you set these things real accurately and they tend to change on you as you go around. It doesn't do a very good job. With these rollers, we've used them for years. It does the same depth all the way around, and it does a very good job. You have to watch for the little wheels. Sometimes they'll stick on you, but other than that, these are old reels that we've got that we rebuilt. I think you can still get these reels through R&R. I think I saw them in their catalog that they do offer these style. But it has the wheel on it, and the wheel's on the outside, and that's a big deal because, like I said, it's outside the area that gets thrown trash on and clippings. And we don't use carbide tips here. We don't like those. We like the standard spring steel Toro blades that you see right here. They're sharper and they're thinner, and they're able to penetrate and pull less on ultra dwarf. Those wider carbide tips are just don't, when you have that large a surface area, you can't get the depth and penetration. It's sort of like, do you want somebody to operate on you with a thin sharp knife, or you want them to use an axe with a wider blade? I mean, it's the same principle. I think these do much better, and a lot of people are switching back to these have seen much improvement. Now the next question is, what kind of spacing do I run? It's real important. We run 2 spacers in between here. As you can see, there's 2 spacers between these blades. One space is a little too tight. You can use one space, but you can't get any depth. You can't set it down deep when you use one spacer. We've tried it. And if you use 2, it's about the right distance apart. They're about 3/8 to a ½ inch apart. And if you use 3 between, a lot of people I've seen had 3 spacers between, it widens out. You can go deeper with less blades, but the frequency is not high enough. I don't like, it's just too wide apart and you don't affect enough surface area. So I like the 2 spacing. I think it's about perfect. And I think the backtrack method, where you're using, you're going to get pretty good thorough comprehension of surface coverage when you do that. We're going to crank this thing up now and run a few strips for you on 16 here. These blade depths are set at 65 thousandths below 0, and that would be below the bottom of the front roller. So our negative 65 thousandths. You see the first pass, he always goes downhill or down grain, and that's pretty important because that's going to be your most aggressive pass, and he's going to track back in this same pass he just made. It tends to help kind of lay it back over a little bit when you do it in that order. If you reverse that order and start at the bottom first and come down on the second pass, it tends to leave it pushed up or puckered up a little bit too much, and when you mow it off, it'll scalp on you. Always start on the high side and go down first like he's doing, and then come back up against it. It'll tend to lay it over a little bit better. I don't know if you can see it, but this first pass is laid over better than that other pass. I'll show you how it tends to lay it over. That laid that back down better than it did just going over it one time. It's just something about doing it that way. But anyway, he's like I said, it's 65 thousandths. Sometimes we'll go as low as 70. And when you have those new blades, like I was showing you, the new Toro blades, they have a real square corner on them because they're the way they're cut when they're new. And when they're new, you can't go 65 below because that corner acts kind of as a high point or an edge, and you can only start out at about 0, but it still does about the same depth But either way, when you have new blades, you need to start probably around 0, even with the ground. And as they wear over a period of time, you can go down with the depth and get them deeper. Now, we have gone as low as 100 thousandths below 0, and you can do that. It's just a pretty aggressive cut, and we only do that if we do feel like we need to, which we haven't been doing that in a long time. But if we feel like we need to, we always do it right before we aerate. That way nobody knows. It doesn't seem to create havoc with the golfers. And the 100 thousandths, like I said, can be done, but if you stay on your vertical mowing and do it light like this once a week, or maybe even twice during the week, you don't really let the grass get ahead of you. And we like to use the analogy, you take out the trash every other day, or do you take the trash out once a month? Well, if you do it once a month, it gets way ahead of you, and you don't, and it's real hard to do, and you have a lot of mess on your hands. Whereas you keep the frequency going. You know, frequency, there is a reason that we do things on a frequency schedule. It's called quality. If frequency didn't matter, we would just mow greens once a week. That's why we can get into something like the US Open or some big tournament. They're cutting greens 2 or 3 times in the morning and 2 or 3 times in the afternoon. There's a reason for that frequency, because it increases quality. You can't do it at that frequency year-round because you wear out your areas. Like where you turn, you can see how much trouble we have doing this procedure with our greens the way they're built. If we did this every day, all these little turnaround areas would wear out. But we're going to average, during the growing season, we average light vertical mowing once a week. When it's cool and in the fall, we only vertical mow. In the spring, maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks. And of course, when it's late spring, late fall, very early spring, and winter, we don't vertical mow at all. You just don't need to. It's all based on how fast the grass is growing. If the grass grows faster, all these processes should increase in frequency or compress together in the intervals. As the grass slows down in growth, they widen back out. It's pretty simple. But that's kind of how we do it. I'm going to pause and show you when the guy gets over here and how he clean this up and what it looks like after it's mowed. These guys are blowing off the screen right after he vertical mowed it. You have to do that to get the sand up that vertical mowing brings up. Now he's fixing to mow it. And he's just going to single cut the screen today because we're hydrojecting right behind this. And then we're going to top dress after we hydrojack today. So we got a lot going on, but we normally don't top dress on Mondays. We usually top dress on Tuesdays because we double hydrojack on Mondays every Monday. 2 directions on the slowest speed, which takes forever. But we're going to stay a little bit late today and get it done because we've got a USGA meeting this week and we need to get this done and out of the way. I'm going to let him mow this, and then I'm going to putt some balls and show you how well it putts behind this vertical mowing. It actually makes the putting better. When you do the light vertical mowing, it just makes the golfer's life so much nicer. And like I said, we don't have a heavy vertical mow here. We never have in 36 years, and we don't have a heavy thatch layer at all. It's not the vertical mowing that keeps your thatch down. It's the light management of your nitrogen, the proper management of nitrogen, and the light frequent top dressing. That's what really dilutes that thatch layer. Top dressing's always been the best thatch control. I've seen it on fairways, I've seen it on greens. Guys that inherited large thatch layers were able to control it by getting on a really good top dressing program and watching their fertility. I'll go down here and show you this. cleaning this up and it's not scalping or anything. And after we vertical mow, we don't use brushes or groomers because the grass is kind of pulled up. And if you turn those on, sometimes it wants to kind of aid and make it scalp worse because it pulls it up a little bit farther. With reverse rotating groomers, it will pull it up a little more. So we just turn them off after we vertical mow. And I think it's a real good idea to do that. It's a lot safer. You just don't want to scalp this stuff. Once you scalp it, it takes forever to heal. I'm sure you've seen that if you scalped your ultra dwarf before. And anybody that's got ultra dwarf has scalped it at some point. Everybody has done it. And we try to keep from doing that. We don't like scalping. We've been pretty good at it over the years of not having any scalping issues. I'll pause again here. When he finishes, I'll roll some balls for you. One of the things I want to reiterate is that vertical mode, you can put down just a little bit more water and then let it sit, and then let the guy come in with a speed roller and roll it down before you mow it, and it'll keep it, it irons it back down and it keeps it from scalping so bad. If you've already vertical mowed, you've done your work with what you wanted to do as far as thinning the grass out. You don't want to come in here and create a bunch of scalp marks. So if you have to, you might want to come back and roll the green before you mow it if you need to. You learn this by trial and error. We know that by looking at the grass, if it's pulled up too much, that we're going to have to roll it before we cut it. Now, we didn't do that on this green. We didn't have to do it on any green out here except this green right over here that we shot earlier, number 12. It always gets plenty of sunlight. As you can see, the sunlight's on that green. You see the shades on this one. But that green always has good growing condition, and it's always been one of our thickest greens out here. And we know from history that green's going to have thickness and puffy problems. And we usually even vertical mow it maybe one extra time a week sometimes just to keep it in line with the other greens. One of the things you can do too is that when you're vertical mowing, the most aggressive pass you're going to make is going from front to back. And now he's going downhill. When you have a green that pitches in one direction like a lot of ours do, they go back from back to front. And so if you go, say, from 6 to 12 on the clock on your vertical mowing pattern, that's going to be your most aggressive pass. The least aggressive pass is going to be going cross grain, or from, say, 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, going this way on this green would be the least aggressive pass. As you see, he's going in the more aggressive pass. But when you vertical mow, if you're pulling and puffing real bad and you've kind of gotten behind on it, you can go cross grain and it won't pull or puff near as bad. And sometimes what you can do is just go ahead and go cross grain for a couple of times until you catch up with the thickness and it won't pull on you and scalp so bad. And then after you've gone cross grain for a couple of times, then you can turn around and go back down grain and it won't have all the scalping issues. But if you ever get a little bit behind, sometimes you just got to go cross grain, and that helps a lot also. But during the day, if you don't have any moisture down, you really need to put moisture down in front of the vertical mower. Big help, tremendous help. Okay, one more time, I'm going to show you the lines that are in this. You see those lines and grooves? That's as deep, that's the look you're looking for. Some people ask you, how deep do you go? Well, it depends on how new your blades are. If your blades are old, about 65 thousandths. But if they're brand new, you're going to be going about 0 to get this look, because they just cut differently when they're new. It's all about the look. I mean, you can't just go off a number because your blades are not worn the same as mine would be. So you need to kind of see it and understand it. It's just like an artist. I mean, they do things based on mixing their paints, their oil, the type brush they use. It's all from experience. And the only way to learn that is get out there and mess with it and do it. Some things you just can't cookbook. There is a lot of art in greenskeeping, a tremendous amount. Okay, here's a a putt. He's still mowing, but we're going to putt where he's already mowed. Show you, this is, you know, right after vertical mowing with a single cut, we're going to show you the roll that you have on this ball. Of course, that's downhill, and these greens are not rolled today, and they were not, let me get back on my zoom here, and they were not rolled yesterday. They were rolled on the 4th of July and the 5th of July, and that was it. That's the first time we've rolled in quite a while. But you know, I like rolling. It gives the extra speed, but I don't roll too much because it is a form of stress. I don't care what anybody says about that. If you roll, you've got to stop and start, and that creates some issues, particularly on our greens, because we don't have a place to go off all these greens. We have to stop on our greens. Okay, I'm going to show you this putt. Now, this is right after you vertical mowed. Our members don't know what vertical mowing is. They have no idea when we vertical mow. They just come out here and play golf. They never complain about it. Never say, oh boy, you vertical mowed again, now it's going to be bad for 3 weeks. And if you vertical mow heavy, you're going to have 2 or 3 weeks in there. If you go real heavy on ultra dwarf, it's going to be at least a week and more that the putting quality is going to suffer. This way, that never suffers, and you just do it light frequently and you stay up with it. It's more of a light canopy control or density than it is trying to think about, well, I'm going to plow this thatch out of here. Well, that's just not the way it works. In fact, I think the guys that mow heavy have more thatch than the guys that do it light. And there's a lot of reasons for that, which we don't have time to discuss, but you just get in a bad vicious cycle. It's like aerification. When you sit there and you vertical mow heavy, and same thing with core aerification. You know, you tell yourself, well, I'm not going to over fertilize, I'm not going to do all this crazy stuff, and you know, I'm going to kind of let it heal back in so I don't over fertilize this and get too thick coming out of aerification. Well, after you sit there and look at those holes for a week or two, almost everybody's going to fertilize. It's just human nature. The members start complaining about it, you're going to do it, and then all of a sudden the fertilizer, kicks in, and you're left with thicker greens than before when you started. It becomes a cycle. Vertical mowing guys do it heavy, try to fertilize their way out of the bad results, and then they wind up in a month they got thicker greens than when they started, and they turn around and do it again, and they repeat a vicious cycle. And in that whole 30-month cycle, you've only got about a week or 6 days of good greens. When you do it this way, you have good greens every day. The only time we have noticeable impact on our green quality is when we're aerifying, and that is only a couple of weeks because we only aerify once a year. Anyway, it can be done. 36-year-old greens that I've been managing here, and the greens actually are over 100 years old. This green's never been rebuilt. It's over 100 years old. It has no internal modern drainage. And like I said, I've done this light frequent vertical mowing for 36 years. So I think if you would say that you have to heavy vertical mow or you're going to get a real big thatch layer, I think we've disproved that myth, because we don't have it here. We have one of the thinnest thatch layers of any of the greens I've ever seen for ultra dwarfs. I'm not saying we got the thinnest, but we got pretty thin, maybe 3/8 of an inch. And surely we would have had thick puffy greens by now after 36 years if you had to heavy vertical mow. Anyway, that's how we do it. It's going to be a pretty morning today. This is really a neat green. This green Donald Ross built back in 1910. Used to actually have a third front on it down here, that in this area right here, that got pulled in somewhere along the line before I got here. We're going to pull this back out and catch these little corners like right here. But this is really a neat green here. It's where we always have our little putting contest. Anyway, this is how we vertical mow, and it's pretty simple if you do it the right way.